Here's what's coming up on episode 65 of the Big Séance Podcast. Dena DeCastro.
Mercury retrograde has a lot of trickster energy to it and will foul things up, sometimes in a way that causes you to slow down and think about things in a different way, and it can actually be beneficial.
Well, I guess that would be my manic moment, Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I guess that would have been it.
Oh, hey, there you go. It was a new moon in Gemini, and your mind was all stimulated and excited by the idea.
Thanks, new moon.
Thanks, new moon. It feels powerful to me, and I think that much.
I love that you said that you don't care if it's not true. It's just it's an intention. That's awesome.
That is really the power of ritual. We do something physical and it makes it real, and therefore we believe it, and our minds are very powerful. That's where I think the real power is coming from.
Or is there ever a time as an astrologer where you can honestly say that what has been perceived as happening or validation that someone has gotten could actually be some kind of astrological pareidolia?
Here's another thought with this Saturn-Neptune Square. How are we already living our dreams and we don't even acknowledge it?
Welcome to the Big Séance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSéance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the séance.
I want to start off today's episode by saying thank you to the many of you who have not only been voting for the podcast at podcastawards.com, but also continuing to promote it by sharing the memes that I've been having fun creating as reminders for people. If you want to see the memes or want to share the memes, you should join the Big Séance Parlor on Facebook or check out Big Séance on Twitter. It's a much more exciting way of encouraging people to vote than just, begging them and throwing a link at them. You guys rock. And for sure, if something happens, we win in our category, it'll be because of you. Voting ends at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 12th, and it's 2016. So there are only a few days left. But remember, you can vote daily. podcastawards.com. And then you have to check your email each time to validate your vote and prove that you're not a robot. So I hope people have been doing that. Anyway, watch this space, light a magic candle, channel your spirit guide. No, seriously, don't channel your spirit guide. They're busy. I also wanted to mention some discussion going on in the Big Séance Parlor on Facebook. Lucian Wolf said he finally made it through all of the episodes and said he didn't know what he was going to do with himself now. And Maureen Spalding, very helpful, chimed in and suggested for Lucian to listen to the episodes all over again, because that's apparently what she does. She says she gets even more out of them the second time. And all I have to say is, wow, that's hardcore. I know that I have listeners who are way past paranerd status, and maybe we need another name. Super paranerds, maybe? Anyway, it's very cool. So thank you, Lucian and Maureen. Well, I also started some discussion in the parlor about a new series on Fox called Houdini and Doyle. I think it's actually 6 episodes in by now, but I'm only on the 2nd episode. I think the idea and the concept is intriguing. Now, I won't pretend to be an expert on these real-life characters, but I'll read the premise straight from Wikipedia. But really quick, understand that right off the bat, there are some major fictional changes to the story. Like, for instance, it takes place in 1901, but they apparently didn't meet until 1920. Anyway, here's that premise. Harry Houdini is a skeptic who doesn't believe anything unless he can see it himself. Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle is a believer who wants to prove that the supernatural is real. The drama opens in 1901 London, shortly after the publication of Doyle's The Great Boer War. Boer War? I don't even know what that is. Houdini and Doyle become involved in the investigation of several mysterious deaths. They argue over whether the causes are natural or supernatural, and often wager on the cause, which causes their police liaison, Constable Adelaide Stratton, some embarrassment. So there you go. It's actually the female Constable Adelaide that I think is the best part of the show. But as you can see, she is almost left out of the description and certainly doesn't get her name in the title. But, of course, maybe that's on purpose, since that's how it went in 1901. But I love her character. The one big thing that has bugged me so far about the show is the modern-ish music. I want to be transported back in time when I watch this, and hearing a blast of club music all of a sudden certainly doesn't help me get into it. Anyway, it has mixed reviews, and you can read the thoughts from several listeners, including our very own Tim Prasil, if you check it out in the parlor. And speaking of, Tim will once again join us after the interview today for another audio issue of Spectral Edition. But Houdini and Doyle, I think it's worth a watch, and unless it gets dorky, I'll probably finish the series. Let me know if you've been watching. Well, let's bring in Dena, who has been here in the parlor before. I just love her energy. And I want to see if you can pick out the aha moment that I had in our conversation. It might be kind of tough, though, because it didn't fully hit me until later, but I love when that happens. So here's the tea tray. I just restocked the Sweet and Low, Stevia, and Splenda, and there's some sugar cubes over there, but they're hard as rocks since no one ever uses them. So today I want to once again welcome Dena DeCastro to the parlor. Hi, Dena.
Hi, Patrick. It's great to be with you again.
I'm excited to have you back on. In case you forgot, Dena is a professional astrologer and spiritual mentor, and her passion is helping you connect to the divine within you. She has an MA in English and taught the subject at the college level for several years. She also has an MA that focuses on spiritual traditions, which later led her to getting a 2-year certificate in spiritual direction from the Urban Spirituality Center in Portland. She's done lots of work with dreams. She's written on the subject of divination and also spoke on that topic at Stanford University in 2008. I would have loved to have been there to hear that. Mm-hmm. You can find her podcast on iTunes, which she created way back in 2007, called the Sirius Astrology Podcast, and that's Sirius. More recently, in April, here at the Big Séance, she contributed a segment of the podcast clearing up some questions I had about both the Mercury and Mars retrogrades. But in her first full episode and visit here in the parlor, which was episode 53 from back in January of this year, we learned that Dena's connection with astrology and even tarot goes back to her childhood. We talked about the bad PR and the misconceptions of astrology. We hit on the importance of free will and making better choices for your highest good. A lot of time was spent learning about forecasts and birth charts, and she graciously, if you remember, gave me a goosebump-inducing year-ahead forecast, which felt really awesome. She was able to validate some opportunities and things that were actually already happening for me. And she even told me I may start seeing and hearing things on a paranormal or metaphysical maybe level very soon. I remember Bell, a longtime listener, received an incredibly validating forecast in that episode as well. At that time, we were in Mercury retrograde, and I think we talked about the Saturn-Neptune Square, which we may still be in. And you gave us a heads up, Dena, on Mars retrograde, which we're in now. And of course, we're going to talk about that today. But most importantly, okay, the first question, how are the mandolin lessons going?
They're going really well. I'm really actually proud of myself. And that's a hard thing for me to get to with my Virgo South Node in my chart and having a lot of Virgo in my chart. Virgo's a very perfectionistic energy and tends toward self-criticism. So I struggle with that. And it's hard for me to admit when I'm doing well at something. But I'm really actually proud of my progress, and my teacher seems to be happy with it as well. So I've kept up on the lessons and practicing, and it's really all about practicing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love to hear when people have tried something new in music or something creative and they've stayed with it and they've been consistent.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is to just continue that, and I really am growing to have a love for the instrument. So as long as that grows, I think I'll be sticking with it for sure.
Very cool. So we're in this Mars retrograde for another week or two, right?
We are until the end of June, actually. Mars will be retrograde up until June 29th, and it feels like it's been a long one. It began on April 17th, which for some reason that feels like a long time ago to me now. I don't know if it's just been a long few weeks or what. But these Mars retrogrades happen about every 2.5 years. They last for about 2.5 months. And so we're in the last month of it, pretty much the last 3 weeks of it right now or less. So the 29th is the day that it moves, stations direct and begins moving forward again. And then it will eventually re-enter, going forward, the sign of Sagittarius, which is where it spent a lot of its retrograde. So, what this means for the duration of June and even July, where it's still what is called in its shadow, meaning it has not gone back up to the point where it first turned backwards, if that makes sense. That shadow period still feels like an extension of the retrograde energy. We're still seeing these themes of Mars retrograde in Scorpio, where it is right now. And that is, it's a sign, Scorpio, to do with going beneath the surface of things, going to the root of things. There's an intensity to Scorpio energy, because often when this Scorpio energy is ambient, which it is right now, it's really kind of in the field, we tend to be more inclined to be brutally honest, if not with others, with ourselves. We tend to see things really clearly. And Mars retrograde energy is also about slowing down, not jumping ahead and jumping forward and just doing things, to do them or to start them, but to slow down and look within more than to bound forward and be constantly looking at what's the next thing I can do and the next thing I can start. So if you're feeling for this duration of June and then even July, like there's that little bit of reticence to start new things, that is actually very appropriate. It's more, I guess, supported by this energy to take it slow, think about what you're doing, go back over things that you have already set into motion, so projects that you've already been working on for a while, and look at what is not working. And you can really get in there and fix things more easily during this window of time.
And that's what was happening back in April when I contacted you with questions about if, this retrograde thing was really affecting me.
Yeah, it affects everyone in different ways, depending on where it lands in your chart. You can get more specific with how it is affecting a person. I, for example, happen to have it on a really sensitive part of my chart. It's going back and forth over my natal Mars. And so I'm really feeling the Mars energy right now. And how that's been showing up for me is, just feeling more sometimes more anger coming up about things that I've maybe been angry about for a long time, but old resentments are coming to the surface, and then I'm having to confront why am I still resentful about that? It can be a time to let it go, and to really understand why you've been holding on to old anger or resentments.
Well, one of the things you warned us about in the last episode was trouble with relationships and conflict. And so I guess that's what you're talking about. And it would be interesting to hear from people to see if this was the case over the last couple of months since we last talked.
I have, I've been seeing that around me and in my own life, that relationships are a bit challenged right now, especially close, intimate relationships, not necessarily all of your, just acquaintances or friendships, but the deeper, close relationships are going through a bit of a testing period right now because this issue of honesty and real intimacy and what that means. We think intimacy is a word that is often misunderstood just to mean sexuality or sexual intimacy, but real intimacy in a Scorpio way is really about connecting emotionally and being very deeply honest with another person. And we can, give lip service often to being honest, but to be really honest is a challenge sometimes. And it brings up stuff. And yet all of that kind of suppressed material does need to come to the surface at times. And that's what this Mars retrograde in Scorpio is churning up, I think, for people.
So with a lot of the retrogrades and, other activity that we hear about in astrology, and maybe, definitely for those of us who don't know a ton about astrology, it seems to me that we only hear about it either in social media or from others when it's something that irks us or something that's affecting us negatively. Is this unfair? And are there times when, certain stars and planets line up and we should always be looking for either a break in the craziness or look for things to happen? Because other than that awesome forecast I received from you, I don't think I ever hear about that.
That's a really great question. I think that there tends to be a negative spin put on certain things. And even in what I just said, I guess you could hear that negatively or have some fear around it and thinking, oh, am I going to go through struggle in my relationship, or what's this going to be about? But I always try to present, even in the difficult or challenging things that come up with the planets, that there's the opportunity for healing and for transformation. And it depends on what you choose, what you choose to do, how conscious a person is going to be about the energies at play. So, for example, Mercury retrograde is one of those that you spoke of that, just gets put out there as, oh, no, Mercury retrograde. Oh, shoot, here we go again. And it's not inherently bad. But it can thwart certain things that we humans like to do. Like we always like to be moving forward and going. And, we like things to just always flow the way we want them to flow. Mercury retrograde has a lot of trickster energy to it and will foul things up. Sometimes at the very, in a way that causes you to slow down and think about things in a different way. And it can actually be beneficial when you stop and look at things differently. And that could be the Mercury retrograde benefit. So I try to present both. It's not just happy light, bubbles and sunshine for each aspect, nor is it always, doom and gloom. There are different possibilities within each of the planetary events that happen. I guess one more thing I would add is that the retrograde period ends at the end of this month. Then there's a bit more of the shadow period going through mid-August, but that really by the end of July, we should feel this energy lifting somewhat, and that it's more possible to move forward and start new things after the end of July.
Well, I can tell you that as a teacher, the summer solstice has already begun. However, the real summer solstice is coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so summer solstice is an astronomical event. At the same time, it is also an astrological event.
Can you talk about the difference between those terms?
Sure, that's really important. So I would say astronomical is the scientific approach to the planets and their movements and what's going on in not only our solar system, but the universe, the galaxy and the galaxies. Astronomy is that search into the nature of the cosmos, right? Astrology is the interpretation of the symbols given to us by the movements of the planets within our solar system. Does that make sense as far as the difference?
Yeah, so if I think in terms of like weather, we're thinking more astronomy.
We are thinking, like you mean the actual weather?
Yeah.
Yes, because that's a different kind of science, but that's along the lines of what I'm talking about, yeah.
Right.
So by astronomy, in terms of the summer solstice being an astronomical event, it means that the sun is at a certain place in the sky and that marks the beginning of the season of summer. That's just like a set of facts, right? Those are the facts. There's nothing astrological about that. I mean, we say, yes, the sun has moved into the sign of Cancer, and therefore there's a meaning to that. But the astronomical set of facts, the data that, okay, the sun moving into Cancer marks the beginning of summer, that just is, right? You can't really argue with that. So that's one piece, that astronomical piece, that the sun's movement into Cancer marks the beginning of the season of summer, which we will be in until the sun moves into Libra, which marks the beginning of fall. Okay, and that comes about September 21st, 22nd this year. Yet there's also a symbolic meaning to summer solstice, and there's a spiritual or pagan meaning to summer solstice. And I think of things in terms of cycles, in the work that I do with the sun and the moon. And so summer solstice, the astrological and the spiritual meaning of that, it has to do with a time where we are more engaged with our communities, with our families, where we're out and about really wanting to be connected to people. And this is a part of, not only the natural flow of, well, the light is at its height now, so we kind of feel more energetic. The days are longer, so we're invited more out into life for longer periods of time. The weather's nicer, so we want to go out and enjoy that. And so it just tends to be a more social, connective time. And so those are the things to focus on during summer. And we do, right? We kind of naturally do. You wouldn't want to isolate yourself, too much during the summer. That can be really depressing.
Unless you're a vampire like some of us, we like to, stay inside more when the sun's out.
No, I own that one, actually. I'm not a heat person. So
Same here.
Like to stay inside. But I tend to be more social in the summer than I am in the winter, for sure. Mm-hmm. And to want to, actually be outside and in nature more, even if I'm alone, just being outside and in nature versus home and inside is, really what you want to do with this energy. So it's a good time to connect. It's a good time to reach out. Cancer energy, the sign that the sun enters at the beginning of the summer, is about connection to home and family. And so it's really important to nurture your family bonds during those times. And that's when, we tend to do that. We tend to take family vacations, or kids are home from school often and they're getting more time with the family. So really that's the focus of the change from spring to summer.
So we've also got some kind of, we talked about it last time too, actually, the Saturn-Neptune Square.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Saturn-Neptune Square began in November. That was the first exact. And I wrote an article on that, and I think you linked to it, or you may have in the last one. So there's still that article there, and it does apply to this whole stretch of time between last November and all the way through this September upcoming. So it's almost a year where that's in play. And we're coming up to another peak of that energy June 18th, so coming right up. So this is usually when planetary transits happen. When two planets connect with each other, they make what's called three passes, 3 peaks of energy. one kind of moving forward, one moving backward, another moving forward, and they're at different points within a certain area of the zodiac. So we're at the middle peak of the three. And so what that means is, that the themes of the Saturn-Neptune square and how that has been playing out in your life since November will be coming to a peak around during this month. And those themes, again, are about the crisis between belief and reality. So, for example, if you have had some long-held dreams or ideals about something, that's Neptune territory. And yet you feel like, how can I ever really make this happen? That's the Saturn energy, the reality check. Can I make this real? Can I make it concrete? That's one of the crises that's expressed in what's called the square. A square aspect is a struggle between two planets, really. There's stress between them and how they're meeting up. And so people might be feeling that in their lives during this time is that sense of maybe feeling far away from some of our dreams, maybe feeling like, can I ever really make this happen? And wondering what's really reasonable to expect, in terms of our lives and our dreams. Now that can sound kind of discouraging, but the point of it, would be to nudge us toward figuring out, well, what is a viable dream versus what isn't? And then we have to work on letting go of the ones that aren't. It's very healthy and good to do that sometimes.
Therapy.
Yeah, exactly. In therapy, it's like, oh yeah, I always wanted to be a veterinarian, but I'm getting close to 45, so it's a little too late, those kind of things. It's like, I'm never going to go to veterinary school at this point. So that's just an example. Like the reality check would be there's just not enough time, to go back to school and to do that, right?
I had that moment was it last night? No, 2 nights ago. I actually put it as my Facebook status and many people laughed at it. And I spent it was 2:33 in the morning, something like that. And I got it in my head that I was going to research a degree in parapsychology.
Yeah.
And, for hours I was planning it and yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden you look at the clock and you realize it's in the middle of the night and you realize that you're experiencing kind of a manic moment that you really don't want to get a second master's degree and you should just go to bed and wake up and start all over.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I'm so glad you figured that out. It's not that I'm telling you what the right or the wrong path would be there, but the more important point is that you came to some peace about it within yourself. Yeah. Right?
There was an exact moment when that happened.
Well, I have had a similar struggle kind of ongoingly, but it did come to a little bit of a peak in the first half of this year about whether to go on and get a PhD, because I have 2 master's degrees, and for years I've kind of been on the fence. Like, do I want to get more school? Do I not? I could go forward, but I decided I don't want to. And my reason was that, and this is all to do with this transit where it's falling in my chart, I just realized I am happy with the formal education I have at this point. I don't feel like I need more formal education. What I need is more life experience and more informal education at this point. There are non-traditional ways that I want to continue my education. I'll always be learning. I'm a lifelong learner, but I don't need to jump through any more academic hoops. I did that for blah, 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 however many years I did, 2 master's degrees and 1 undergraduate degree, a lot of my adult life in school, and I was feeling this feeling of dread about the thought of going back to school was kind of nauseating me, actually. Yeah,
I think my exact words on Facebook were that I'd rather stab my face off than take more classes.
Isn't that the truth? And it's like, Patrick, you are getting your advanced degree in parapsychology by doing this podcast.
and listening to everybody's expertise. Yeah.
Yes, aren't you? It's so we have to reframe and look at things differently in terms of, well, what is a reasonable way to achieve our dreams? And here's another thought with this Saturn-Neptune square. how are we already living our dreams and we don't even acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
Like you are kind of living a dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this podcast is a dream you had and it's coming to fruition.
Absolutely.
And to accept that and to be more in it is really important right now, I think.
Living in the moment.
Absolutely. Living in the moment, getting real with what is in the here and now, and then letting go of any delusions of grandeur about, what we need to do and achieve in order to, get to our dreams. It's like, well, sometimes we have so much of our dreams here in the present that we don't even acknowledge. So,
well, especially when your dream was dreamt up all of a sudden over a 2-hour period randomly in one evening.
Wow. That wanted to come in real strong.
I guess, yeah.
It's pretty awesome. Those are how the best ideas come in sometimes.
I guess so. I don't know, summers, when I'm not teaching and I have way more time to be creative, and I do not like the process of going to sleep. I love sleeping, but I can't stand the process of winding down to go to sleep. So I'm up all night, and I'm a rebel and don't want to go to bed. And so I think of all these ideas. And so I just get weird like that every now and then. Like I said, it's a manic moment.
My brother calls it fear of missing out. That it's that thing that
exactly
children have.
What it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss a good moment here. I got to be awake.
Even though you're like one of 10 people in the whole neighborhood that is not in bed sleeping, you're going to miss something.
Yes.
Also, as I keep referring back to, teacher, as a middle school teacher, with these new and full moons, I definitely feel something going on during certain times. And often it's when someone comes down the hall with a sigh and says something about, it's a full moon tonight. Can you tell? Tell us about some of this new and full moon stuff.
Full moons get a lot more attention, which is kind of apropos because the symbology of a full moon it's very visible. It's what's out there and seen and, recognized. And the new moon, the dark moon, which happens 2 weeks prior to the full moon. So they go every 2 weeks, you have, new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. And the new moons also can carry some of that energy of people being moody, people being sensitive. And so I'll ask you, so we just had a new moon on Saturday, the 4th. And that date, we had a new moon in Gemini, which was a pretty potent lineup of energy. There was a few planets in Gemini opposing Saturn and Sag, squaring Neptune and Pisces, squaring Jupiter and Virgo, and they were lining up in this exact cross formation. And that is a pretty rare formation. How I experienced it, how I think it might have been playing out, is a lot of frenetic or busy energy being available on Saturday and Sunday, finding it very hard to get focused, but also wrestling with a lot of mental level issues, thinking about worrying about things, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, but a lot of busy mind energy this weekend. What did you think about that weekend?
Well, again, with, it being my summer and not having a lot of, stress that's forced upon me, I was pretty lazy and enjoying things this Saturday.
Awesome. That's a perfect way to use new moon energy, by the way, is just the new moon by itself is a time to go inward more, to relax, to be restful. It's not a time to be super active. The activity or the kind of the energy I was referring to was more like a busy mind kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I personally found it difficult to sleep on Saturday and Sunday nights, both. I didn't have like super good sleep.
Well, I guess that would be my manic moment, I guess. Saturday. Oh, yeah. I guess that would have been it.
Oh, hey, there you go. You did say it was Saturday.
Yeah, now that I'm doing the math. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you have it. So it was a new moon in Gemini, and your mind was all stimulated and excited by the idea.
Thanks, new moon.
Thanks, new moon. That's the thing with Gemini energy. It can kind of take you down a rabbit hole because there's a bit of distraction that can happen with a lot of Gemini going on. But yeah, we do have upcoming full moon on June 20th in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. And that full moon will feature, it will be at the very end of Sagittarius. So not as much going on with that full moon as there was on this new moon that just passed. But with Sagittarius, it's important to focus on thinking about the farther future, the bigger plan, the bigger vision, to let yourself think about the meaning of things for you in the bigger scope of things. So it would be a good time to get out and explore and kind of contemplate what's going on in your life. I often think that Sagittarius moon is a good time to travel, even if it's a short trip. So I think that one falls on, it's kind of in the middle of the week. So it's a Monday. It's kind of an awkward time to take a trip, but it could be for summer vacation, for people. So yeah, to kind of get away from it all and think about your life and reflect on the meaning of it and to look at the bigger picture. That's the message of a Sagittarius full moon. Then we'll have, followed by that, we do that every 2 weeks thing. We'll have a new moon in Cancer on July 4th on Independence Day. So that weekend has the new moon energy, which will be interesting to see, and this does often happen, that a new moon falls during a time when it's a really active time for people. So July 4th tends to be, we're out celebrating, there's fireworks, it's not a very restful time. But the message of a Cancer new moon time would be to spend time at home with family, be kind of quiet and relaxed, do a lot of self-nurturing and self-care. For me, self-nurturing and self-care does not include fireworks. So
very on edge kind of feeling there.
Yeah, I really don't like them. It's really, I just don't like loud noises. So they're pretty much the loudest noise that you can think of. So yeah, I mean, you kind of have to take care of yourself and set boundaries. If you're a person that's sensitive in the first place, that Cancer new moon time of July 4th, you might be feeling even more sensitive and open and psychically aware. And so attend to that need, if you have it, to be more quiet and to be in solitude, even if you have to be. It's kind of hard to be in solitude on July 4th weekend, I guess. But you could be with people that you trust and you love, that, so it'll feel more easeful.
Do you know anything about, like, I hear people put out like different stones or to gain energy or something, either in like a new moon or a full moon? Do you know anything about that? I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, I do. I have done that in the past. Often at the full moon, it's a good time to cleanse and or charge crystals. And just the new moon can be also a time of releasing energy from. So the cleansing actually is more apropos to a new moon energy, cleansing and releasing. But sometimes people do use the full moon to cleanse energetically as well. I think of the full moon as a time to charge things with energy. So for example, if I had, I have pendants that I collect, different stones, and I love stones, love crystals. And I, may have certain intentions for my different pendants. So for example, I have a pendant that a friend gave me that I use to help me write, that helps me kind of break through my creative blocks. And, whatever, if it's not true, I don't really care. It's like, I believe in it, right? So it's going to help me. It's a talisman. And so I might put that pendant under the full moon to just say, and with the intention that I'm going to leave it there overnight. It's going to gather the full moon's energy, and I'm going to ask that it hold the energy to help me write, to help me be creative. And then I would wear that pendant. It feels powerful to me, and I think that much.
I love that you said that you don't care if it's not true. It's just it's an intention. That's awesome.
That is really the power of ritual. We do something physical and it makes it real. and therefore we believe it, and our minds are very powerful. That's where I think the real power is coming from. Whatever we can do to get our mind in the shape to believe fully in something.
Makes me think of the Ouija.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do think that's true with the Ouija. Mm-hmm. So that is, a short answer to your question about the stones. And people can do that for sure. Experiment with it. I always invite people to, if they're skeptical, just experiment with it. And if it calls to you, but it's not something that you have to do. It's something that if you're interested or it calls to you, it might be fun to try.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think the only other one I would bring up, we'll go through July. So I guess one more, which would be the Capricorn full moon on July 19th. And Capricorn is the opposite sign of Cancer. Capricorn is a really grounded and practical energy. And so that is a good time to focus on what you want to bring to manifestation. In the days leading up to that full moon, it is a good time to work on projects that you're trying to bring to a close or a finish, or things that you're really needing to push to get done, because Capricorn energy holds a lot of discipline and focus. And so I would say, like I said, the moon itself, the full moon itself is on July 19th, but even the week leading up to that has the building energy of waxing moon. And you can really ride that to make things happen more easily on the physical level.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Since a lot of these, retrogrades and energies and moons, they last for months at a time. And you offer more than just forecasts, in what you do. But if I remember correctly, a forecast even lasts for over a year, correct? That you do?
Yeah.
Like 15 months or something?
It does. I mean, I really look at a period ahead. Honestly, I'm looking out about 2 years. I might tell if the person that I'm working with about a year ahead of time, just because that's about all that most people can hold. But I'm really thinking ahead that, a little further than that. Like, what big things are coming down the road that might be important to think about now, even as I'm giving this reading today. But yes, the cycles of the planets, they vary. For example, if you're having a Pluto transit, Pluto's connecting to something in your chart, that lasts about 3 years. But a transit of Jupiter may only last about 9 months at the longest. So those are some examples of different lengths of time that a planet can be moving through your chart. So I kind of rank all of those transits that are happening for a person in terms of importance, in terms of the length. And then I create a forecast that way. And so it's kind of like prioritizing what are the more important things, what are the more long-lasting things versus what are the shorter-term things that they'll need to consider.
So how often could a person look into having their forecast read?
It depends on what they are wanting it for. I mean, I've done forecasts for people as often as monthly. If they are someone who has special, they might have a special need for their business where they really want to look at kind of micro trends and the planets that are, as they're moving through the chart this week. I mean, I can get that micro on something. So we can look at the smaller and shorter cycles. There is always something to talk about in the chart. So I could do it as often as monthly for somebody. But generally people come every, 6 months to a year to kind of get a checkup and see where are all the planets in relation to my chart and what are the bigger trends at play. And a year is a good marker, for people, depending on whether they like to consider their birthday the beginning of a new year or the actual new year, the beginning of the new year. Those are good times that people often check in.
I was say, do you stay busy in January, I bet?
That's like the busiest time, yeah. That's people want to know what's up for the year. And to me, it's kind of random because I don't think of that as the beginning of the year. I think of the spring equinox as the beginning. of the wheel. It's spring. It's when things are kicking off, and the dead of winter does not feel like the beginning of anything to me.
As a school teacher, I can tell you it doesn't either.
Right? No, you're like, oh, I got to go back to school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've been there. But yeah, so that is a really popular time that people want to come in, and I usually plan ahead for that. I really try to, so that I can accommodate people. But it's spread out throughout the year because people, of course, have birthdays at all different times. And I have people that have been coming for a long time and they get their yearly reading.
Okay, so I want to throw a tiny challenge your way today. I'd hate to be accused of never playing the Devicles. The Devicles. I'd hate to be accused of never playing the devil's advocate. As a paranerd, you would probably understand the term pareidolia, right? Because you've referred to yourself as a paranerd, correct?
Yes, I have.
So, the most common kind of pareidolia happens visually, like when people see the face of Jesus in their grilled cheese, or right. A cloud in the shape of an angel. Actually, it's often called matrixing, maybe more commonly. It's really popular on Facebook and social media when people pass their photos around with the circle and say, hey, this is what it is. And,
right.
Pareidolia very much happens with EVP as well. Well, our brains like to make random bits of information fit together in a coherent way. Well, today I was listening to an interview with Cal Cooper, who is this awesome, young and hip parapsychologist who I've probably mentioned before. And they were talking about pareidolia. And because I'm thinking about this interview, suddenly I got to thinking, I wonder if a kind of pareidolia can ever happen in astrology, either in the literal way, the planets and stars line up, or is there ever a time as an astrologer where you can honestly say that what has been perceived as happening or validation that someone has gotten could actually be some kind of astrological pareidolia?
So, yeah, I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's kind of like the concept that if I were to do a forecast for somebody, then that they would see the pattern or see the experience because I have told them they would. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Maybe, and like I said, this is such a random question. I don't know that if I hadn't listened to that interview today that I've ever would have come up with this question. No, I don't know if it translates exactly. But like if someone wants really badly for some event to happen, could their brain force some, events that are happening to oh yeah. I don't even know how to explain it. You know what I'm saying?
Think I do get what you're saying. And I think, yes, that's very possible. And in fact, if you are a diligent and aware astrologer, you're working for that to not happen in you, and to be clear if it is happening. How I would frame it, that the one thing that I described is maybe one way that it would manifest, where let's say I do a reading for somebody and I say, here are some of the themes at play. I am not predictive, whereas some astrologers do predict. I don't make predictions, right? I'm just saying, here are the energies at play. Here's how you can use these energies, but I might suggest a couple ways it could manifest. I have had people come back to me and say, wow, you said I was going to meet somebody, or that relationship was really important in my chart this year, and I didn't think I was, and I did, and I were really surprised. But was it me saying that, okay, well, you have all these transits to your Venus, the partner, the planet of partnership, and so therefore this is a year where relationship and partnership is in a spotlight. You could choose to not be in a partnership. I always give people their choice, but I'd say, the energy is in flow for you to meet somebody if that's what you want, right? Mm-hmm. And that me saying it maybe gives them permission and maybe gives them a way to look at life differently so that they actually make it happen more, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right?
Well, that's like putting your crystal out there under the moon.
Yes. Exactly. So that's one way that I could see it happening. That's and a non-harmful way. Where it could be harmful, though, the way that I would like to avoid is what I do hear happening sometimes with astrologers or kind of Astrala nerds. We have Astrala nerds.
That's harder to spell.
Yeah. If you know astrology, or maybe just a little enough to be dangerous, you can use it more as a control device. Like, oh, I want this or that to be true in my life, and I'm going to interpret the planets the way I want to interpret them so that it supports my already existing view, of how I want things to be. There is that shadow side of astrology, for sure. And I would say that's similar to what you're talking about. I'm not sure it's exactly what you're talking about. But it's a little bit of OCD, with astrology, where people can get so into what's going on with their transits, but more from a need to control than a way to understand how to work with the energy at its optimal level for you. My question is, what are the planets trying to teach me right now? And what I understand is that learning is rarely comfortable. It rarely reinforces already existing levels of comfort and belief. We're always being invited to evolve and to learn. And the planets are doing that with us as well. So if we're being challenged, that's good. If I'm feeling like, I'm going to interpret the planets to support the fact that, I want to be in this relationship and the planets are saying I shouldn't leave and it's a bad relationship for me, right? Then that's a problem. And I have seen that practiced. I've seen it practice across the board, though. It's not just astrology. And you're probably aware of that as well. It's not. It's in all kinds of intuitive and reading work that could happen. So, yeah, I think it's a great question.
Well, and I'm happy with the answer. So good. I hope all my devil's advocate friends out there are happy with the answer as well. I don't know who those people are, but that sounded good. I was really proud of myself for coming up with that question. And the answer wasn't even what I thought it would be. So cool.
Yeah, I love questions.
So anything cool coming up, any projects, and remind people where to find you and how to follow you and all that.
Yeah. So my website is DenaDeCastro.com. So it's DenaDeCastro.com. I have an active blog. Check back with that every now and again, but easier way to be sure that you're catching my blog entries is to sign up for my mailing list, which is at the bottom of that website. You can sign up for my free newsletter and announcements there. And I just send out very short, emails. I don't bombard people with emails, but I just like to invite people to look at, maybe I've written a post on the new moon, or maybe I've written a post on a certain thing that's going on in the sky right now.
I get those emails. They're interesting.
Good. I'm glad you like them. And so, yeah, I invite people to do that. I am really booked up with readings this next month or so. And then in July, I'm actually taking some time off to work on a couple projects. So we're doing a reboot of Cycles of Wisdom, which is an ebook that I co-created with my colleague, Dr. Danielle Cornelius. And we're working on that and getting a different version, upgraded version out to people by the end of the summer. So I'll be working on that in July, which means I won't be very available for readings in July, but I do have ability to schedule with people out into August at this point. So if you're interested in getting a reading with me, you can go to my site and do that. And you can find that under the readings tab, browse the different kinds of readings, and you can schedule out as far ahead as August and beyond. And if you just want to touch in with me, I'd love to hear from you. I have a contact page there as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have a spectacular day, and thank you for hooking up with me again.
Oh, thank you so much, Patrick, for having me back on. I really, really have fun every time we chat. So we will definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, again, awesome energy coming through the Skypes.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Take good care.
You're listening to the Big Séance Podcast with Patrick Keller. Look for us on iTunes and be sure to check out BigSéance.com for more discussion.
Welcome to Spectral Edition. I'm Tim Prasil. When I first started collecting these newspaper articles about ghosts, I ruled out the ones that proved to be something other than ghosts, mistaken ghosts. But I started to realize that these are also part of that wave of ghost reports that appeared in newspapers between the Civil War and World War I. So what I have today are 4 of those reports. They're all fairly short, but they all turn out to be something other than a ghost, and some of them are rather strange. I'll start with one that was published in the Intermountain Farmer and Ranchman, a newspaper published in Salt Lake City. Is published on October 17th of 1902, and the headline is "Arrested a Ghost." A ghost, in quotes, was arrested by the police yesterday, and it is now in a cell at the police station. For months it has haunted a vacant house in Otisco Street, regularly every night appearing in an upper window in white draperies and disappearing before dawn. Friday, a new tenant moved into the haunted house, and soon a call came to the police station. When Sergeant Jerry Dwyer arrived there, he saw the ghost sitting in an upper window in broad daylight. In the street, a swarm of boys threw mud and stones at the phantom and would not be driven away. The sergeant telephoned to the station for instructions. "Arrest the ghost," commanded the captain. The officers went upstairs and tremblingly approached the spirit at the window. "You're arrested," said he as he tapped the spook on the shoulder. Then he discovered it was a plaster cast with white robes on, placed there to keep tramps out of the house when it was untenanted. The next one comes from the Pacific Commercial Advertiser, which is a newspaper from Honolulu. It was published on December 12th of 1901, and the headline is "Monkey Shines in Graveyard." Kenosha, Wisconsin, November 24th. A monkey attired in red cap and white jacket at Largen Cemetery has caused a ghost scare. For a week past, there have been repeated reports of a small figure like a child in the graveyard at night, and there have been cries like those of a hungry baby. Last night, 3 girls who were passing were thrown into hysterics by the appearance of the figure on a fence. One of the girls, Matilda Borger, was nearly driven insane and is still in the care of a physician. Today, a posse of citizens searched the graveyard, and though the monkey was seen in the barred entrance to a vault, all efforts to secure him were in vain. This next one ends in a way that I just don't understand at all what was really going on here. It was published in the St. Louis Republic on May 11th of 1902. Ghost in a cemetery. Supposed spook proved to be a young woman in white. Seneca Falls, New York, May 10th. During the last 2 weeks, a number of young men claimed to have seen a ghost in Rest Vale Cemetery while on their way home from a fishing trip on Seneca River. While returning home from Cayuga Lake on a bicycle last evening, a well-known citizen claimed to have seen a white object moving about among the monuments in the cemetery. He says that the ghost seemed to be in great distress as he heard loud groans and saw streaks of fire issue from its mouth. He was greatly frightened and ran home as fast as he could operate his bicycle. A large crowd visited the cemetery. The ghost proved to be a young woman from Geneva who was visiting the village. She was dressed in white and was accompanied by a married man who lives in the 4th Ward. When caught by a couple of young men, the woman was sitting behind a monument, lighting parlor matches and throwing them into the air, while the man nearby was making loud groans. The excuse they gave for their strange performances was that they were trying to frighten a certain man in the 2nd Ward whose attentions to the woman were unwelcome. And there it ends. Excuse me, could you help me scare away a guy? Sure. Let's go to the cemetery. You light matches. I'll moan and groan. My wife will be perfectly comfortable with that. And certainly that'll scare him away. We got one more. It's very short. I hope that this is an urban legend. I hope that this didn't really happen. It was published in the Public Ledger, a newspaper from Memphis, Tennessee, on March 29th of 1870. And it reads this way. An Indiana farmer thought he saw a ghost in his cemetery the other night. He procured his gun, thinking he would try the effect of cold lead on the apparition, fired, and brought down his own poor old white horse. I'm going to guess that a farmer can recognize his own horse. I certainly hope so, because otherwise that's a very sad story. I'm Tim Prasil. I have close to 300 of these articles, and I post one each Wednesday on my website. The website is called The Merry Ghost Hunter, and you're very welcome to stop by.
Thanks for joining us for the Big Séance Podcast. We'd better get back to the table while there's still some candlelight left.
You know, it's been a long time since we've done hot topics on the podcast, but there's big news this week, at least if you're a Ghost Hunters fan. On June 7th, Jason Hawes of TAPS posted a statement on Facebook that read, "With heavy heart, we want to inform everyone that we are choosing at this time to end our relationship with Syfy Channel. Season 11 will be the last season we will do Ghost Hunters with the Syfy Channel. We've been one of their top-rated and top-watched shows since TAPS and Pilgrim Films decided to join forces and create the show Ghost Hunters. You all have been wonderful, and your support has made the show Ghost Hunters such a huge success, as well as changing our lives in all incredible ways. There are some huge things in the works with TAPS, Ghost Hunters, Pilgrim Films, and so much more. I wish I could share more with you now, but I can't. Hopefully real soon, though. I promise we will keep you all up to date with what is coming up in the near future. Again, thank you all for the love, respect, and support. Jason Hawes /TAPS/Ghost Hunters." So now this leaves fans wondering whether they're simply moving to another channel or just done. Fans also know that it has been painfully obvious that Syfy has been trying to ditch the relationship with Ghost Hunters for a few years now. There doesn't seem to have been a lot of respect there. If you read statements made by Bruni and Adam Berry this week, and they've already had kind of an awkward relationship with the show, they seem to write it off, saying things like, "Good run," and "It's over." And maybe it is just over. Maybe it's time to stop beating a dead show. But things just happen to be looking up for Amy and Adam, because as of today, actually, they began production on their new show, which has not been named yet, but supposedly revolves around the ghosts of family members. Interesting. I really want this to be a good one. We'll see. Moving on. If you haven't checked out a post entitled "Being Able to Read in Your Dreams" at bigseance.com, you may want to click the link that I'll include in the show notes. In the almost 4 years since I wrote it, it continues to be the most popular post, and mostly because people find it through searching something about reading in their dreams in Google, which is fascinating. It certainly isn't the most popular post because of how well the writing is. There are several interesting comments with some conversations that have been submitted on that post over the years. I want to have an episode of the podcast on this topic soon, and so I wanted to give you the opportunity to chime in. Have a great week, everybody. You'll hear from me again in 2 weeks. Enjoy summer. For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com. Just click on the Big Séance Podcast logo or find it in the menu. You can also find and subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and we've just been added to the Google Play Music Store. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to bigseance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line at 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to bigseance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.